The violinist isn't coming. The butler's voice cracked. In 20 minutes, the most important dinner Adrian Vale had hosted all year would begin with no music, furious clients, and 12 carefully planned months at risk of unraveling before the first glass of wine was poured. Then the plus-size maid, carrying a tray of champagne, stopped beside them. How much was the violinist being paid? Someone laughed. $12,000. Why? Elena Moretti slowly laid down the tray. I'll do it. The room erupted. One servant nearly choked, trying not to laugh. Another stared at her as if she had just volunteered to perform surgery. Even Adrian looked her up and down in disbelief. You, Elena met the Mafia Boss's eyes without blinking. You need music? I need $12,000. Seems efficient. Silence. Adrian studied her for one long moment. Then he turned to the butler. Give her the violin. The violin arrived in a black leather case 5 minutes later. Eleanor was still wearing her maid's uniform when the butler placed it on the service table in front of her. No one had stopped staring. You were serious? One of the kitchen staff asked. Elena glanced at the clock. Unfortunately, yes. A few people laughed again. Adrian Vale did not. He stood at the end of the corridor in a perfectly tailored black suit, watching the woman he had employed for nearly 11 months, as though he was seeing her for the first time. Until tonight, Elena Moretti had been almost invisible to him. She arrived early. She worked quietly. She hummed while polishing silverware. She occasionally argued with the chef about throwing away perfectly good food. That was about all Adrian knew. Now she was asking him to gamble the most important dinner of the year on her ability to play a violin. His butler lowered his voice. Mr. Vale, perhaps we should simply cancel the music. No? Adrian's answer came immediately. Tonight's guests were not men who tolerated imperfections. Several had flown in from Europe. One had postponed meetings in 3 countries to attend. Another, Vittorio Bellini, was a notoriously difficult investor who treated hospitality as a test of character. If the wine was wrong, he noticed. If the food arrived 3 minutes late, he noticed. And if Adrian had promised a private classical performance and delivered silence, he would definitely notice. Eleanor opened the violin case. Her expression changed. The amusement disappeared. She touched the instrument carefully, almost cautiously, then lifted it from the velvet lining. The butler noticed. So did Adrian. That was not how someone picked up an unfamiliar object. It was how someone greeted an old friend. Still, one of the staff members folded her arms. You can barely carry 6 champagne glasses without bumping into a chair. Eleanor looked up. Fortunately, violins don't come in sets of 6. A cook snorted. Even the butler fought a smile. Adrian didn't. How well can you play? Eleanor examined the bow. Well enough. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I can give you without playing. Adrian stepped closer. Most people changed when he approached them. Their shoulders tightened. Their voices became more careful. Their eyes found somewhere else to look. Eleanor simply looked back. If you embarrass me, he said, this evening becomes very expensive. If I embarrass you, don't pay me. That stopped him. $12,000 means that much to you. For the first time, Something shifted behind her eyes. Yes. Why? That wasn't part of the audition. Adrian stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth moved. Fair enough. He turned toward the housekeeper. Dress her. Elena blinked. Excuse me. You're not performing in that. She looked down at her grey uniform. What's wrong with this? It announces that you're carrying towels. I usually am. Tonight you're carrying a violin. He checked his watch. You have 15 minutes. The housekeeper rushed Elena upstairs. Word travelled through the mansion almost instantly. The maid was going to play. Not just any maid. Elena, the big maid who hummed while cleaning. By the time she reached the staff dressing room, 2 women had already pulled out dresses kept for emergency hospitality situations. The first was too small. The second was worse. Elena stared at it. If I breathe in that, someone will have to explain my death to the guests. The housekeeper sighed and opened another wardrobe. Finally, they found a simple black dress. No glitter, no dramatic transformation, no attempt to make Elena look like someone else. It simply fit. When she looked in the mirror, Elena was surprised by what bothered her most. Not the dress. Not the people laughing downstairs. The violin. For years, she had trained herself not to think about stages, not to remember practice rooms before sunrise. Her father tapping a pencil against the music stand, or her mother calling from the kitchen that dinner was getting cold. Not to remember the conservatory. Not to remember the last violin she had owned. That instrument had disappeared across a counter in exchange for money that was gone within weeks. Hospital bills had a way of swallowing beautiful things. Elena closed her eyes. $12,000. That was why she was doing this. Not nostalgia, not pride, not Adrian Vale. $12,000 could solve a problem she had been carrying for months. She opened her eyes. Ready? The housekeeper asked. No. The woman looked worried. Elena gave her a small smile, but apparently that has never stopped anyone in this house. Downstairs, the first guests were arriving. Adrian stood near the entrance, greeting them with effortless calm, while privately calculating every possible way this could become a disaster. Then Elena appeared at the top of the staircase. Several members of staff turned. The laughter did not disappear completely, but it weakened. Elena was still Elena, still plus size, still the woman they had watched carrying laundry baskets that morning. The dress had not transformed her. It had only removed the uniform people had been using to define her. Adrian's gaze lingered for half a second longer than necessary. Elena noticed. Problem? No. Good. She walked past him. He turned. You seem very confident for someone about to risk my reputation. She stopped. You seem very calm for someone letting a maid risk it. For once, Adrian had no immediate response. Elena extended her hand. Where's the violin? The butler brought it forward. She took the instrument, placed it beneath her chin, and drew the bow lightly across one string, then another. The sound was quiet, precise. She adjusted a peg by the smallest degree and listened again. Across the room, Victoria Bellini had just accepted a glass of wine. He stopped mid-con conversation. His eyes moved toward Elena, then toward Adrian. Who is she? Adrian looked at the woman tuning the violin beneath the chandelier. 20 minutes ago, he would have had a simple answer. My maid. Now, for reasons he could not yet explain, the answer no longer seemed sufficient. Eleanor lifted the bow. The room gradually fell silent, and before she played a single note of the actual performance, Adrian realized something everyone else in the room was about to discover. Elena Moretti had held a violin before. Many times. The first note changed the room. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Eleanor drew the bow across the strings with such control that the conversations nearest the fireplace died first. Then the voices beside the dining table faded. Within seconds, even the servers had stopped pretending not to watch. Adrian remained standing. He knew almost nothing about playing violin, but he knew confidence when he saw it. There was no hesitation in Elena's hands, no searching for notes, no stiffness in her shoulders. The woman who had been carrying champagne 20 minutes earlier now held the instrument as though the mansion, the guests, and the people who had laughed at her had simply disappeared. Vittorio Bellini lowered his wine glass. Interesting. Adrian glanced at him. Coming from Vittorio. That was practically applause. Eleanor moved into the first piece. It was demanding, elegant, and fast enough that any remaining suspicion vanished within the opening minute. One of the employees who had mocked her earlier stared from the doorway. The cook whispered, "Since when can she do that?" The butler didn't answer. He was too busy watching Adrian, because Adrian Vale was no longer watching the room. He was watching Elena. Not the black dress, not her body, her hands. Every movement seemed certain. Years of discipline lived in those fingers. That bothered him. Talent could be hidden. Training like this could not happen by accident. And yet she had spent almost a year inside his home without mentioning any of it. Eleanor finished the first piece. For one suspended second, there was silence. Then applause filled the room. She lowered the bow, no triumphant smile, no glance toward the staff to see who was embarrassed now. She simply adjusted the violin beneath her chin and prepared for the next piece. That, more than anything, caught Adrian's attention. She wasn't proving them wrong. She was working the same way she cleaned a room, the same way she carried a tray. Except now everyone could see what they had failed to notice before. Victoria stepped closer after the second piece. "You studied?" Elena looked at him. That sounded less like a question. "Conservatory." A pause. "A long time ago. Where?" Elena smiled politely. "I thought tonight I was being paid to play, not confess." Victoria laughed. Adrian almost did. Almost. The evening continued. Something in the atmosphere had shifted completely. Guests who had barely noticed Elena when she served them now asked her name. A woman near the piano requested Debussy. A businessman asked for Paganini, clearly expecting to test her. Eleanor gave him a look. "You want Paganini during dinner?" He smiled. "Can you play it?" "Yes." "Then why not?" "Because your soup deserves peace." Laughter moved through the room. Even Adrian smiled this time. Eleanor saw it. For a fraction of a second, she looked surprised. Then she continued playing. Later, as the main course was cleared, Victoria approached her again. There is something I haven't heard in years. Elena lowered the violin. If I know it. You might not, he gave the title. Adrian's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. The room around him seemed to recede. No, he said. Victoria turned. You remember it? Adrian did not answer. Of course he remembered it. There were things a man could bury beneath 20 years of business, violence, money, and carefully controlled silence. That melody was not one of them. His mother had written it when Adrian was a child. She had never published it, never performed it publicly. She had played fragments at home, usually late at night, sitting at the piano with pages scattered around her. And beside her sometimes had been a violinist, a young man Adrian barely remembered. The composition had never been completed. After his mother died, Adrian had searched through her music. He found drafts, corrections, entire pages crossed out, but no ending. He stopped looking. Victoria turned back to Elena. Do you know it? Elena had gone completely still. Her fingers tightened slightly around the bow. Yes. Adrian looked at her. What did you say? She met his eyes. I know it. That piece was never published. I didn't say I learned it from a publication. For the first time that evening, Elena looked uncertain, not afraid, something closer to memory. She raised the violin. Adrian stepped forward. Where did you hear it? Elena hesitated. My father. 2 words. That was all. Then she began. Adrian forgot the guests. The opening phrase was unmistakable. He was 8 years old again. Bare feet on a cold floor, a half-open door, his mother at the piano, stopping every few measures to erase something from the page. The melody continued exactly as he remembered it. Not approximately, not something similar. Exactly. He slowly sat down. Elena did not look at him. She played through the first movement, then into the passage his mother had rewritten dozens of times. Adrian knew what came next. Nothing. The piece ended there. It always had. Elena reached the final familiar phrase. Adrian's jaw tightened. The bow slowed. One note, then another. The place where memory said the music should disappear arrived, but Elena kept playing. Adrian's head lifted. The melody moved beyond the unfinished measure, softly at first. Then, with growing certainty, it carried fragments of his mother's theme forward, changed them, answered them, and returned to something that had been waiting unresolved for decades. No one in the room understood what was happening. They only knew Adrian Vale had gone pale. Elena played the final note. It lingered, then vanished. The room erupted in applause. Victoria stood. Several guests followed. Elena lowered the violin, but Adrian did not clap. He stared at her. 20 years of unanswered memory had just been given an ending by a woman who had spent that morning cleaning his dining room. He walked toward her. The applause weakened as people noticed his expression. Elena watched him approach. Where did you learn that ending? My father taught it to me. Adrian stopped directly in front of her. That's impossible. Her expression tightened. Why? Because there is no ending now. The room was completely silent. Adrian lowered his voice. My mother wrote that piece. Eleanor's face changed for the first time all night. Her composure cracked. Your mother? She never finished it. Eleanor looked down at the violin. Something connected behind her eyes. A memory, a name, perhaps a story she had heard years ago and never understood. Adrienne took another step. That ending doesn't exist. Elena slowly looked back at him. Her grip on the bow steadied. It does now. And for the first time in years, Adrian Vale had absolutely no idea what to say. By the next morning, Eleanor was carrying fresh towels down the east corridor, as if nothing unusual had happened. The mansion, unfortunately, had other ideas. Everywhere she went, conversations stopped. The kitchen staff stared. 2 housemaids whispered behind a linen cart. Someone had apparently told the gardener, because even he looked at Elena through the window with an expression usually reserved for miracles. Elena ignored all of them. She had spent enough of her life learning that attention could disappear as quickly as it arrived. At 9:15, the butler found her replacing flowers in the library. Mr. Vale wants to see you. Elena kept arranging the roses. Did he say why? No. That's comforting. He's in his office. She sighed. Am I being fired? The butler's mouth twitched. If Mr. Vale intended to fire you, I doubt he would have personally requested your presence. That somehow sounds worse. 5 minutes later, Elena stood outside Adrian's office. She knocked. Come in. Adrian was behind his desk. On the surface in front of him lay several sheets of old music. Elena recognized the handwriting before she reached the chair. She stopped. Where did you get those? My mother's belongings. Adrienne gestured toward the seat. Eleanor remained standing. You wanted to see me? His eyes moved to her. You played an ending last night that does not appear on any of these pages. I know. I spent years looking for it. I didn't know you were looking. Then tell me how your father had it. Eleanor glanced at the pages again. The answer had once been an ordinary childhood story. Now it felt like she had accidentally walked into someone else's past. My father studied in Italy when he was young. Adrienne said nothing. He played violin. There was a pianist and composer. He sometimes worked with a woman named Sophia. Adrienne's expression hardened. Sophia Vale. Elena looked at him. My father never told me her last name. The room became very quiet. Adrienne leaned back. What did he tell you? That she was brilliant, stubborn. She hated finishing anything she thought wasn't perfect. A faint, almost painful smile touched Adrienne's face. That sounds like her. Elena looked at the handwritten pages. She gave him a copy of an unfinished composition before they went separate ways. He kept it. And the ending. My father wrote it. Adrienne's eyes narrowed. Eleanor continued before he could misunderstand. Not immediately. He worked on it for years. She remembered stacks of manuscript paper on their old piano. Her father crossing out entire pages, starting again, playing 4 measures, then staring through the window for 10 minutes. He said some music shouldn't be completed just because you can complete it. You have to understand what the composer was trying to say. Adrienne looked down at the pages, and he believed he understood my mother. No. Elena's answer came quickly. He believed he understood the question she was asking. That silenced him. Elena sat down at last. When I was 16, he taught me his ending. He told me it wasn't really his. He said he had just followed her melody until it found somewhere to rest. Adrian stared at the manuscript. For 20 years, he had treated the unfinished composition as one more thing death had stolen. Now he discovered that somewhere outside his world, another musician had carried it forward. And eventually that music had reached Elena. "Can you play it again?" She blinked. "Now?" "Yes. I'm working." "So am I. You're sitting behind a desk, interrogating the cleaning staff." "I'm multitasking." Elena almost smiled. "Almost. You paid for one performance. I can pay for another. Then double the rate." Adrian looked up. $24,000. You're the one who apparently has expensive taste. He stared at her for several seconds. Most people negotiated with Adrian carefully. Eleanor negotiated with him as if she were selling tomatoes at a market. Something about it was becoming dangerously entertaining. "You're serious? Usually, and if I refuse, then you'll have to survive without live violin." She stood. "I believe in you." Adrian watched her reach the door. "Eleanor?" She turned. "Why did you need the $12,000? Her humor vanished. "That's personal. I could help." "I didn't ask you to." "You asked me for $12,000. I worked for $12,000. There was no anger in her voice. That made the distinction sharper. Adrian studied her. "Fine." Eleanor nodded once. "Thank you." Then she left. He should have let the matter end there. He did not. Over the next several days, Adrian discovered an increasingly ridiculous number of reasons the mansion required music. On Tuesday evening, Elena entered the drawing room and found the violin waiting beside the piano. She looked at Adrian. "What is this?" "The house is too quiet. It was quiet yesterday. It has gotten worse." On Thursday, he summoned her after dinner. Elena arrived with her arms folded. "What emergency requires a violin tonight?" Adrian lifted his coffee. "My coffee tastes better with Mozart." She stared at him. "Your coffee tastes exactly the same. You haven't tried it?" "I don't need to." "How can you know?" "Because Mozart is dead. Not magical." Adrian took another sip. "You're very argumentative for an employee. You're very bored for a mafia boss." He nearly choked on his coffee. Elena smiled. That was when Adrian realized he had begun waiting for that smile. Not intentionally. At least that was what he told himself. The music was an excuse. His mother's composition was an excuse. There were questions he still wanted answered. That was all. Except his questions increasingly had nothing to do with Sophia Vale. He wanted to know why Elena had abandoned music, why she never mentioned the conservatory, why someone who could silence a room with 4 strings had chosen a life where people barely noticed her, and most of all, why $12,000 had mattered enough for her to risk humiliation in front of an entire room. Eleanor refused to answer that one, so Adrian stopped asking. Instead, he listened. Sometimes she played for 20 minutes, sometimes an hour. Sometimes she refused completely because she had work to finish. He never ordered her. That mattered to Elena more than she admitted. One evening, after finishing a piece, she found Adrian standing beside the window. "You don't actually like Mozart that much, do you?" He looked offended. "I have excellent taste. You requested the same piece 3 times this week. Consistency, obsession, preference, boredom." He turned toward her. "You always need the last word." "No." A pause. "I just usually deserve it." Adrian laughed. Not the polite sound he used with guests. A real laugh. Eleanor stared at him. He noticed. "What?" "Nothing. You're looking at me strangely. I didn't know you could do that." "Do what?" "Look human." His smile disappeared. Elena immediately lifted the violin. "Ah, there he is." He shook his head. "You are remarkably comfortable insulting your employer. You keep inviting me back." That answer stayed with him because she was right. He did again and again. At first, Adrian had believed he wanted Elena near him because she carried the last surviving piece of his mother's music. But somewhere between Mozart, terrible coffee, and arguments, he kept finding excuses to start. The reason had changed. The unfinished song had made him notice Elena Moretti. It was no longer the reason he wanted her to stay. 3 weeks later, Eleanor entered the ballroom carrying a tray of champagne again. This time, no one laughed when she passed. That should have felt like progress. Instead, made her uncomfortable. People who had once looked through her now looked too long. Some smiled, some whispered, and some, Elena had learned, preferred the old arrangement. Bianca Duca was one of them. She arrived shortly after 8 in a silver gown that probably cost more than Elena earned in 6 months. Beautiful, polished, and born into the kind of family whose name opened doors before anyone bothered a knocking. Bianca had known Adrian since childhood. More importantly, according to half the staff, both families had spent years assuming the 2 of them would eventually marry. Adrian had apparently never received that particular memo. Bianca had. Her eyes found Elena almost immediately. So that's her. The woman beside her followed her gaze. The violinist. The maid. Bianca emphasized the second word. Elena heard it. She kept walking. Tonight was as another private gathering, smaller than the first, but filled with many of the same people. Elena had specifically asked Adrian whether she was expected to perform. He had said no. She was relieved. The violin had begun to belong to her again. She did not want it becoming another item on the mansion's entertainment schedule. For nearly an hour, Bianca ignored her. Then Adrian made the mistake of laughing. Elena was beside the dining table when he asked why one arrangement of flowers had been moved. "Because you put white lilies beside white candles. I didn't put them there. Your house did. My house has no opinions about flowers. It has better opinions than you." Adrian smiled. Bianca saw it from across the room. 10 minutes later, she approached Elena. "I hear you caused quite a sensation at the last dinner." Elena adjusted a glass on her tray. "I played violin, yes. Everyone has mentioned it." Bianca smiled. It was technically a smile several times. Eleanor understood immediately. "I apologize for the inconvenience." Bianca's expression tightened. "You misunderstand me. I was afraid of that." A nearby guest looked down at his drink to hide his amusement. Bianca stepped closer. "Playing one pretty song doesn't make a maid sophisticated. The conversation around them softened. Elena felt it happen. That peculiar silence created when everyone wanted to listen, but no one wanted to admit it. She could have walked away. She almost did. Then Bianca's gaze moved deliberately over Elena's body. At least the dress they found you last time was flattering. Elena said nothing. Bianca continued. A good dress can hide many things. There it was, and the insult beneath the perfume. Class, Bianca added, isn't one of them. Elena finally looked at her. Neither is cruelty. Someone inhaled sharply across the room. Adrian turned. Bianca's face changed only slightly, but Elena saw the humiliation land. You're very confident lately. No, I've always spoken like this. Perhaps people simply didn't notice you before. That one hurt more than Elena wanted it to, because it was true. Bianca saw the flicker in her face and smiled. Then she looked toward the musicians hired for the evening. Perhaps you should play something for us. No, thank you. Why not? I'm working. Bianca laughed. As a maid? Yes. Elena said it without embarrassment. Bianca seemed almost disappointed. Then her eyes brightened. I know. Play Adrienne's mother's song. Adrienne was already moving towards them. Eleanor's expression went cold. No, the answer was immediate. Bianca blinked. Excuse me. I said, no. Oh, come on. Everyone has heard about this mysterious masterpiece. It isn't mine to perform on request. Bianca turned toward the surrounding guests. Apparently, our maid has become temperamental now that she has discovered applause. Elena tightened her grip on the tray. She could tolerate comments about her job. She had tolerated comments about her body for most of her life. But that song was different. It belonged to a dead woman Elena had never met, to her father, to Adrian, to two musicians separated by time, who had somehow left pieces of themselves inside the same melody. It was not a party trick. Bianca smiled. What is it then, if not entertainment? Family. Adrienne's voice cut through the room. Bianca turned. He stood several feet behind her. No smile, no amusement. Nothing in his expression suggested this was a conversation. She should continue. Adri, I heard you. Bianca glanced around. So you agree? She shouldn't be refusing guests. Elena is not here to perform for anyone tonight. She works for you. Yes. Bianca gave a small laugh. Then I don't understand the problem. Adrian stepped beside Elena. The problem is that you seem confused about what employment means. The room became completely silent. Elena looked at him. Bianca's cheeks reened. I was making conversation. You commented on her body, her background, her job, and then demanded that she perform a piece of my mother's music. Adrian's voice remained calm. That made it worse. If that is your idea of conversation, improve it. Adrian, no. One word. Final. He looked around the room. Several guests immediately discovered urgent reasons to study their glasses. The last time many of you were here, the musician I hired failed to arrive. Adrian continued. Elena stepped forward when no one else had a solution. Elena's pulse quickened. She did not like being made the center of attention. But Adrian wasn't looking at her. He was looking at everyone else. she saved the evening. More importantly, the composition some of you have been discussing exists in its completed form because her father preserved my mother's work and spent years completing what she left unfinished. Bianca folded her arms. That's touching, but she is still your maid. Adrienne finally looked at her. Yes. Eleanor expected anger. Instead, his voice became quieter. Her job is what she does. He paused. It has nothing to do with what she is worth. No one moved. Bianca's expression hardened. You're making a spectacle over a servant. No. Adrienne glanced at Eleanor. You did that. Bianca looked around and realized, too late, that the room was no longer on her side. Eleanor could have enjoyed it. A younger version of herself might have instead. She felt tired. She placed the champagne tray on a nearby table. May I go? Adrienne's expression changed immediately. You don't need my permission. I'm technically working. That almost made him smile. Go. Eleanor walked out. Adrienne waited several seconds before following. He found her on the terrace. She stood beside the stone railing, looking into the dark gardens. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did. No, she turned. I could handle Bianca. I know. Then why interfere? Adrienne stopped beside her, because being capable of enduring disrespect does not mean you should have to. Elena had no answer ready for that. She hated that. You made it worse. How? Tomorrow everyone will say the Mafia Boss defended his maid. They already call me worse things. I'm serious. So am I. She looked at him. People are going to think I don't particularly care what people think. That must be convenient. It is. Despite herself, Eleanor smiled. Adrienne noticed. Of course he did. Then she became serious again. You didn't defend me because you thought I was helpless? His expression almost looked offended. Elena, I have watched you negotiate $24,000 for a violin performance and tell me my coffee has no personality. It doesn't. My point exactly. She laughed quietly. Then Adrienne looked back through the ballroom windows. Bianca was wrong about something else. What? She thinks your life here defines you. Eleanor's smile faded. And you don't? No. How would you know? He turned toward her. Because I've heard you play. That doesn't mean you know me, no. A pause. But I'd like to. For once, there was no joke waiting in Elena's mouth. Inside, the party continued without them. Outside, Adrienne Vale stood beside the woman everyone had once dismissed as a maid, and realized he had stopped looking for excuses to hear her play. Now he was looking for excuses to know her, and Elena, despite every reason she had built for keeping her distance, was beginning to notice. Adrienne learned the truth about the $12,000 by accident. 4 days after Bianca's party, Eleanor was in the kitchen during her break, when her phone rang. She looked at the screen and immediately stood. Excuse me. She disappeared through the service door. Adrienne happened to be crossing the corridor when he heard her voice. No, don't withdraw. He stopped. There was a pause. Marco, listen to me. You worked too hard for this. Another pause. Eleanor lowered her voice. I have the money. Adrian should have kept walking. He knew that. Instead, he remained where he was. No, Mum's bills are handled. I told you I would figure it out. Silence. Then Elena spoke more firmly. You are not leaving university because of money. End of discussion. Adrian understood the $12,000. When Eleanor returned inside, she nearly walked into him. She stopped. How much did you hear? Enough. Her face hardened. That was private. I know. Apparently not. She moved past him. Eleanor. She stopped, but did not turn. Your brother? Yes. Tuition. Part of it. Adrian waited, perhaps because the secret was already exposed. Elena finally sighed. My family had debts before Marco started university. Medical bills, legal expenses, things accumulated, and you've been paying them. My mother pays what she can. I pay what I can. What happened to your father? The question landed differently. Eleanor looked toward the window. He died. Adrian said nothing. After that, everything collapsed quickly. His academy was already involved in a lawsuit. Then there were hospital bills, loans, and the conservatory. I left. You gave up your career? I changed priorities. That isn't the same thing. It is when bills arrive. Adrian studied her. And your violin? A small silence. I sold it. Something about that answer bothered him more than he expected. He imagined Elena taking an instrument she had spent years mastering and handing it to a stranger, because a number on a hospital statement mattered more than everything the violin represented. How much does your brother need? She immediately looked at him. No, I haven't offered anything yet. You were about to. I can uncover his tuition. No, Eleanor. No, it would make no difference to me. It would make a difference to me. Adrian frowned. Why? Because I don't want to owe you my brother's future. You wouldn't owe me anything. That's easy to say when you're the person writing the check. He was silent. Elena softened slightly. I appreciate it. You don't sound appreciative. I'm trying very hard. That almost made him smile. Then she continued. I didn't play that night because I wanted charity. I heard there was a job worth $12,000, and I knew I could do it. You did more than do it. Then I earned the money. Yes, that matters. Adrian finally understood the refusal was not pride for pride's sake. Elena had spent years watching circumstances take choices away from her. Her father, her education, her violin, her career. The last thing she wanted was another powerful person deciding what her life should become, even if that decision came disguised as generosity. So Adrian did something unusual. He backed away. All right. Eleanor blinked. That's it. That's it. You're not going to argue. I can, if you'd prefer. No. Then we agree. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. I don't trust how easy that was. You're becoming paranoid. I work for a Mafia Boss. Occupational hazard. He walked away. For the next week, Adrian said nothing about the money. Instead, he made a phone call. Not to a banker, not to an accountant, to Victoria Bellini. The older man had spent decades supporting orchestras and conservatories across Europe, and knew more conductors than Adrian knew politicians. "I need a favor," Adrian said. Victoria laughed. "You asking? Enjoy it while it lasts." 2 weeks later, Elena found an envelope waiting beside the violin. She opened it. Inside was an invitation to a closed audition with a regional symphony orchestra. She stood at it for nearly a minute. Then she marched directly into Adrian's office. "What did you do?" He looked up. "Good afternoon." She dropped the invitation on his desk. This Adrian glanced at it. "Looks like an audition." "I can read." "Excellent. That will help with the sheet music." "Adrian?" He leaned back. "I spoke to someone." "You promised." "I promised not to pay your brother's tuition." "You know what I meant?" "Yes." His expression became serious. "So, let me explain what I did." Eleanor crossed her arms. "I gave Vittorio your name." Her jaw tightened. "Nothing else." "What does that mean?" "It means the orchestra knows a violinist named Elena Moretti requested an audition, and they know you recommended me." "No." She paused. "They don't?" "No, Victoria." He arranged the slot. "The panel does not know who you are." Elena looked down at the invitation. "If you fail, you fail." Adrian's words were deliberately plain. "If you succeed, it will be because you were better than the musicians competing against you." She looked at him again. "You really didn't tell them?" "I specifically told Victoria that if anyone gave you special treatment, you would probably murder both of us." "I wouldn't murder Victoria." Adrian raised an eyebrow. Elena sighed. "Fine, maybe a little." He smiled. So she picked up the invitation. "I'll think about it." "You're going?" I said. "I'll think about it." "You're absolutely going." There's the controlling man I recognize. But she was smiling when she left. 3 weeks later, Elena auditioned. Adrian did not attend. She had forbidden it. He did not call the conductor. He did not contact the panel, and despite having built an empire on knowing things before everyone else, Adrian forced himself not to ask for the result. At 6:40 that evening, his office door opened. Elena stood there. Her expression was unreadable. Adrian rose. "Well?" She placed a letter on his desk. He read the first line, then looked up. "You got it." Elena nodded for several seconds. Neither spoke. Then she laughed. A small, disbelieving sound. "I got it." Adrian smiled. Not because he had given her something, because he hadn't. She had taken the door he opened and walked through it herself. "You're buying dinner," Elena said. He blinked. "Why am I buying dinner?" "Because I just got into an orchestra." "I thought independence mattered to you." "It does. I'm independently deciding you should pay." Adrian laughed. Then he took the opportunity before she could escape it. "Dinner tomorrow." She narrowed her eyes. "With clients?" "No." "Business?" "No." "Violin?" "No violin." "Staff?" "No staff." Elena studied him. "Just dinner?" "Just dinner." Her eyes narrowed further. "That sounds suspiciously like a date." Adrian held her gaze. "I was hoping you'd notice." For perhaps the first time since he had met her, Elena Moretti had no clever answer ready. and Adrian enjoyed every second of it. 3 months later, Elena Moretti walked onto a stage carrying a violin that belonged to her, not borrowed from Adrian's collection, not taken from a case in his mansion. Hers. She had bought it with her first payments from the orchestra, supplemented by money she had saved from working at the Veal estate. It wasn't the violin she had sold years ago. Nothing could bring that one back. But perhaps that was the point. Some things were not meant to be recovered. They were meant to be replaced by something chosen freely. The concert hall was full. Eleanor stood beneath the lights in a black dress, listening to the final whispers disappear. No maid's uniform, no champagne tray, no laughter. In the front row sat Adrian Vale. For once, he was not the most intimidating person in the room. He simply looked proud. Eleanor raised her bow. Then she began the composition his mother had never finished. Adrian recognized every note. His mother's beginning, her uncertainty, her unanswered melody. Then came the ending Elena's father had written, but something was different. The final passage had changed. It was warmer, less hesitant. The last notes rose instead of fading. When the piece ended, the audience stood. Adrian remained still for a moment before joining them. Later, backstage, he found Elena putting away her violin. "You changed the ending." She looked over her shoulder. "You noticed? I've heard it approximately 47 times. 49. That is deeply concerning." Eleanor smiled. The old ending sounded lonely. Adrian's expression softened. "And this one?" She closed the case. "This one knows where it's going." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adrian handed her a folder. Eleanor opened it. The first page contained several lines of painfully uneven, handwritten notation. At the top were 2 words. For Eleanor. She looked up. "You wrote this one page." Eleanor flipped through the folder. "Adrian, there are 20 pages. 19 are blank. That feels like important information. I was hoping you'd help me finish it." She laughed. "You're terrible at flirting. And yet you're still here. Your persistence is statistically alarming." He stepped closer. "Is that a yes?" Eleanor studied him. Then she removed the violin from its case again and held it toward him. "Play your part first." Adrian stared at the instrument. "I don't play violin." "I know. I have no musical training." "I know. This seems unnecessarily cruel. Consider it character development." She placed the violin in his hands. 5 minutes later, the most feared Mafia Boss in the city dragged the bow across one string. The sound was catastrophic. Eleanor covered her ears. That was a crime. Adrian lowered the bow. "I've been accused of worse." She burst out laughing. Adrian looked at her. That laugh. He realized he had been chasing it long before either of them had called their dinners dates. The unfinished song had brought Eleanor into his world, but she had never needed him to finish her story. She had done that herself. Adrian raised the violin again. Elena immediately stepped backward. "No, you said I had to learn. I've reconsidered. Too late." He drew the bow across the strings. Another terrible note filled the room. Elena groaned. Adrian smiled. And somewhere between the music his mother had left unfinished and the life Elena had finally begun again.